Hello, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. Today I am so excited because I have two brand new VISEART eyeshadow palettes. Now, if you're new to my channel, I absolutely love VISEART so much. These are one of my favorite eyeshadow formulas. I just find that they have this easy to work with, super blendable, effortless formula. They are a pro brand, so you're getting these beautiful blendable mattes. They have shimmers that can be built up to be very reflective, but they're always so smooth and effortless on everyone. I think they easily have some of the very best solid formulas on the market. So I'm always so thrilled when they come out with these palettes. Now they have just come out with two brand new palettes right before Black Friday. We have the SIRENEUSE Nocturne Étendue. Now, if you'll recall, last year's kind of holiday time launch was the SIRENEUSE palette, so I will of course compare that to this one. And we also have the VIOLETTE Nocturne Étendue. Now these palettes are made in the US and have a 36-month shelf life, and each palette has 12 stunning shades. So starting with the SIRENEUSE Nocturne palette, I believe it was this time last year that they actually changed the packaging on these. It used to be a trifold, now it just opens up regularly, and then you also have this typical paper slip in there. You can just pull that out like I tend to do if you want, or you can leave it in there to kind of help keep everything nice and clean. So this is the color story of the SIRENEUSE palette. This is a very earthy toned color story. We have a lot of these olive greens, which have been so popular this fall holiday season. So we're seeing a little bit of golds here, a little bit of a rose gold moment as well. I think this is a beautiful color story. It looks grungy, but I think it's going to be so wearable. And the VIOLETTE Nocturne Étendue. Right when I thought the SIRENEUSE Nocturne was going to be my favorite, I looked at this one and it's this gorgeous mix of purpley tones, but super wearable purpley tones, and then some just overall more cool leaning neutrals. It's a beautiful, beautiful color story. If the VIOLETTE Étendue palette, which I also have and will compare this to, is our spring summer variant, this is 100% our fall winter variant. So I am very excited about this as well. I'm thinking I might like to create two looks with each palette. That way I can kind of see how many directions both of these palettes can go. And then at the end, I will of course do a bunch of comparisons for you. But before we get into trying these on and comparing them, let's hop into the swatches. So first we'll talk about the SIRENEUSE Nocturne Étendue palette. So going left to right, we have Voile, which is an iced silver rosé with a shimmer finish. Harpia is a cool toned light beige with a matte finish. Lulene is a mid-tone clay rose with a matte finish. Sirene is a patinade silver green with a metallic finish. Echo is a mid-tone chestnut blushed brown with a matte finish. And Paris is a nude mauve with blue duochromatic flecks. Tritonia is a coralline blushed sienna with a duochromatic finish. Ciel Figé is a basalt silver brown with a duochromatic finish. Tideborn is a light, cool-toned nude slate with a matte finish. Sirene is an antiqued gold green with a shimmer finish. Nautilus is a muted kelp green with a matte finish. Brindel is an espresso bitter brown with a matte finish. So I'm loving this color story. I do apologize if I completely butchered the names. They are so tricky. I do my very best. Okay, so the VIOLETTE Nocturne palette. Looking at the swatches of this palette, Plume is a light, cool-toned nude pink with a matte finish. Violentine is a light blush pink with a matte finish. Chimère is a white purple pink with a duochromatic finish. This shade is fascinating to me because it looks like a shimmery white in the pan, but when you swatch it out, it has that purple to it. Cendré is a mid-toned grayish purple with a matte finish. Estrella is a cool mid-tone taupe brown with a matte finish. Serpentine is a light purple with flecks of silver, lilac, pink, and green with a duochromatic finish. Iantha is a mid-toned, dusty, cool-toned purple with a matte finish. Selene Noctufleur is a mid-tone taupe brown with a matte finish. Gris Fumé is a smoked taupe brown purple with a silver shimmer finish. Fleur de Nuit is a light muted lavender with a matte finish. Mur Sauvage is a mid-tone, cool tone cacao taupe with a matte finish. And Nocturne is a deep elderberry purple brown with a matte finish. So once again, I felt like I really had to work for those names, but let me zoom you in. I will pin the bangs back and we can get into two looks with the SIRENEUSE Nocturne palette. All right, so starting with the SIRENEUSE Nocturne palette, I definitely want to do one look that's going to pull much more green and then maybe a look that's a little bit more neutral brown. I could mix and match, but I just always prefer to stay relatively monochromatic whenever I'm playing with color. I just feel like it's always a safe bet. So I'm going to start with this shade down here. And for this, I'm just using the Details by Tati ES4. I have been using my Details by Tati brushes so much. The weekend that I'm filming this, they are doing their Black Friday sale, and it is really, really good. I don't know if it'll still be on by the time I get this video up, but I did order the expansion brush set. I ordered the essentials when she first launched, but I did order the expansion set for Black Friday. I am so tempted to get the specialty set too, but I think I might hold off. Kind of want to wait until she releases them in singles so I can stock up on some of my favorite brushes, like the foundation brush. This crease brush is phenomenal, and you're going to see my favorite shimmer brush in a moment. And this is a really great transition shade. I think it's going to work very, very well with these greens. Just want to add a little bit more to the outer corner. And this brush always gives me the most diffused crease as well. I never get too much pigment with this. From there, I'm going to grab my Details by Tati ES6. This brush has also become a favorite. It's really, really tiny, but what I've been doing, I'm going to go into this green right here. I like to pick it up just with the tip. And I'm going to start placing the shade on the outer corner, but I'm just going to start with it near the lash line, and I'm just working that back and forth so that the majority of the pigment is right there at that lash line. And this is just the perfect brush for this. And as I get toward the outer portion, I am just going to start sort of flicking that out a bit. Not that I'm intentionally creating a very sharp wing, I just want to sort of create a little bit of shape with that shade. And that is why I'm just lightly flicking. And then with what's left on my brush, I'm making small circular motions around that exact outer V of my eye, just to give a little bit more shape and work that product up, but not too intensely. Okay, so now that I've got that sort of built up the way I want, I'm going to take my Details by Tati ES5. I'm going to go into the shade right here. And I love this brush for shimmers. This has become my favorite shimmer brush. I find that this gives me a nice amount of impact. It also gives me so much more precision than using my fingers, which I've always known, but I've had a hard time finding brushes that give me that same lay down. And I also find that this brush somehow helps me reduce fallout. For some reason, I just don't get as much fallout when I use this brush. So just placing this shade on that outer half of the lid, not going all the way to the outer corner. All right, so now that we have this shade down, I want to go into this very light green shade up here. And I want to apply this one all over the lid, so that I'm getting still a green look, but something that's a little bit lighter and brighter. I think this particular green shade is so, so, so pretty. That's so nice and bright and pretty. I just want to take a little bit more of that deeper shimmery green just to sort of help mesh them out here a little bit. And if I were wearing this look for the rest of the day, I might bring either the brown or the matte green sort of under the lash line. I'm not going to do that because it makes it harder to switch between looks, but I really like how this is coming together. I'm going to go into this lightest pink shade up here, and I'm going to put this one on my inner corner for a little bit of a brightening effect. And this is perfect for that. And just adding a little bit more of that matte green to that outer corner and sort of reinforcing that lash line a little bit. I actually love how this look came together. I think this is so fun. Let me quickly pop off camera, throw on some mascara, and I'll show you the finished look number 1, and then we can get into look number 2. All right, so here is the finished look number 1 with this palette. I love this. I love the green. I love how well it came together, but I love how it's also very wearable at the same time. I also don't feel like I have any other VISEART palettes that could give me a similar look. So that does make me very excited. But let's get into look number 2 with this one. I think I'm going to start with this softer shade up here. I think it's going to be sort of similar to the one we started with on the other side, but just a little bit pinkier. I really, really love how that green look came together. So once again, just getting a very smooth, diffused blend around that crease. And then I'm just going to grab a smaller crease brush. This is the BK Beauty 202, and I want to go into this shade right here. This shade looks far more pigmented, but I want to start building the outer corner. I'm just kind of making circles with this one in that outer corner. I don't want to bring it in too far, but I do just want to give myself a little bit of depth out there before I go in with that deepest shade. And as always, I find these mattes are playing very well with one another. They are blending super easily, very, very seamless. And then on this side, you could also see that I only used a brush. I didn't even wet that brush, and it still gave me a really beautiful shine to the lids, but it's not enhancing any texture. It just looks really, really pretty. And that's exactly what I love about these shadows. Now I'm just grabbing my ES6 from Details by Tati. I'm going into this deepest brown shade right here. And I'm only picking up the littlest bit with the tip of my brush, and I'm going to do that same sort of thing where I apply it near the lash line and sort of start flicking out as I get closer to the outer corner, just to sort of build a little bit of depth, but not to make it too intense. And then just making small circles with what's left on the brush to help carve out that outer V. Just cleaning off my ES5 and going back into this one for the shimmers, and I want to go into this shade right here. I just thought this one was so beautiful when I swatched it. The shade beside it I was kind of thinking about using, but it's kind of this blue, brown, purple sort of shade that I don't love on me personally. Last year's Serenuse palette actually had something a little bit similar to that as well, and I kind of had the same comment. I think it can be a beautiful shade. I don't necessarily love it on me, but it can also be quite complementary to my eye color. So it's one of those shades that I don't love, but I know works well with my eyes. So just sweeping this one all over the lid. This is a really pretty soft sort of rose gold, a little bit more rose than gold, but it definitely has that sort of shift to it. Very, very pretty. And I think that looks really nice as well. But I do think for the outer corner, I might go into this shade. And I think this might be a nice shade to sort of mesh that shade into the outer corner a little bit, give us a little bit more depth and dimension without being too intense. Yes, these shades are working very well together also. So they kind of have a bit of a nice gradient, and I feel like that deeper shimmer just kind of gave me a little bit of depth, but it's almost like a subtle amount of depth. It's very pretty. Okay, I'm going to go into the shade again here. This is really nice, and I want to put this one right in that inner corner just to give myself a little bit of brightness. And I think with this, I've used all but 2 shades from this palette, so not bad at all. So far, everything is performing very, very well. All right, let me quickly pop on some mascara. I'll show you the finished look number 2, and then we can get into the Violette Nocturne. All right, so here is the finished look number 2 with the Serenuse Nocturne palette. So very much a warm leaning, kind of pinky rose gold sort of look going on over here. And over here we have our greens. I love that I was able to get 2 very different looks with this palette. Again, just a very, very effortless formula. This is one of those formulas that really just does the work for you, and that's what I love so much. So let me take these off, sadly, because I actually like both of them so much, and then we can get in to the Violette Nocturne palette. Alright, so getting into the Violette Nocturne palette, I think I'm going to start with this lightest shade up here. With this palette, I'm thinking I might do something with just the browns, but I also really, of course, want to play with the purples. And you may have noticed this when we did the swatches, but this palette only contains 3 shimmers overall. So if you do prefer palettes that are a little bit more shimmer heavy, this one may not be your favorite. Okay, next I want to dip into this lighter lavender. This shade really gives me very much a spring kind of feel, but I think we need it to really enhance the crease for this first purple look. I did preserve the mascara when I took my last 2 looks off, so I am kind of working around that, which I don't mind. I do find it always helps catch any fallout when I do this. I'm going to grab a smaller brush now, and I'm going to go into this matte purple right here. This one is more of a dusty mauve, and this is a Rephr 14 brush. I'm going in here, and I'm going to start placing this shade toward the outer corner, and just start deepening that up, adding some depth. And another thing I love about VISEART is even when they do dip into color, they do it in such a wearable, approachable way that even if you are a neutral brown shadow lover like I am, they make it so easy and comfortable to step out of that comfort zone a little bit. I'm going into that really deep purple down here. Very much the same thing, using this to enhance the lash line and just flicking it out a little bit. I went a little wide on that one, but that's okay. And then using any remaining shadow to buff up into the outer V, and I'm just using little circular motions to do that. Okay, switching back to that ES5 that I've cleaned off, I'm going to go into this shade right here. This shade is interesting because it kind of does look really intense, but it does have a bit of a almost green shift to it. I'm going to start by placing this one in the middle, going more toward the outer portion of the lid. Okay. This shade is giving me a little bit of a hard time with the brush, so I am going to go in with my fingers. This one is working much better with just a finger, but taking this shade all over the lid, and I can see a slight shift to the shade. It does have a slight greeny shift. It's not going to be an intense Danessa Myricks kind of shift, but it is a little bit softer, but still giving you a little bit of that intrigue with the shift, but again, being very soft and wearable at the same time. So I don't know if that shift is coming off on camera, but I do think it looks really, really pretty. Okay, I'm going to take a smaller brush now, and I want to go into this white shifty shade. I do want to use this on the inner corner. All right, so this is the finished look number 1 with the Violette Nocturne. I do think it's pretty. So far I'm liking the looks I created with the other palette more, but I still think this one is quite pretty. And I love the slight shift from the shade. Again, it's not going to be an incredibly intense, obvious type of shift the way you would see with Danessa Myricks or even some indie brands, but I still think it's just a really soft kind of shift, which is what I would expect from VISEART. Okay, let's get into look number 2. Okay, for look number 2, I think I might start laying down a base with this shade right here. This is not going to give me much pigment, but I think it will just sort of create a bit of a clean base for everything to go on top of. And from there, let's go into this warmer brown over here. And I'll start adding this one into the crease as well. I would say it's much more neutral than the other shades in the palette, which I do find to be a little bit more cool toned, but this is going to be a really nice crease shade. This is building perfectly for that outer corner. Going into this deeper shade now, I do also want to see if, much like the Serinuse Nocturne, we can get some very different looks from this palette. This one, I think you're always going to end up with something sort of purple leaning, because some of these browns do have that more sort of purple undertone to them, which is perfectly fine with me. Okay, now I want to go into this brown right here. This is the only shimmer I haven't used yet. This actually looks really intense in the pan, but when I pick it up, I'm going to use this one with a finger. So again, it still looks kind of deep. It's very much like a taupey sort of brown, but I want to put this one all over the lid. And I feel like when you blend it out, it doesn't look quite as intense. It really just ends up looking more of a taupe. So it's giving me a little bit more of a smoky sort of lid, but because it has that taupe element to it, it's going to play beautifully with the purples if I decide to mix and match. Going back into my crease brush just to blend those edges. And maybe just adding a little bit more of that deepest purple as well. Okay, going into that white shade once again and using this for the inner corner. I also want to see if I can pick up a little bit of that white on a finger. And I want to see what it looks like if I just apply a little bit right to the very center. Kind of to give a bit of a spotlight effect, but also to just brighten up that relatively smoky look I created there. That's pretty. I think that's quite subtle, but I like it. It does give a little bit of a brightness. Not overly obvious, but it does give a bit of a brightness, so I do like that. All right, so here are the finished 2 looks with the Violette Nocturne palette. I like how both of these turned out. I will be honest though, I do prefer the way the first 2 looks with the other palette turned out. So I still really like these looks, but I think the other palette might be my favorite. But let me zoom you out and we can get into some of these comparisons. Okay, so first let's talk about the Serinuse Nocturne palette. I love this one. This is like a perfect fall dream. It's grungy, but it's not too grungy. You can still get a nice amount of brightness from it. It's beautiful. It's effortless. You do get some really nice lighter mattes to build from. I love the mix of greens as well as the lighter, softer pinks. You have almost like this burgundy, but this sort of purpley tone shade, and then you just get some really solid browns. I love that they also give us an olive matte green to work with these. I love everything about this. I think this ends up being a very, very cohesive color story, and I do love a good green. I really do. Getting into the comparisons, I of course have to compare to the sister palette, which is the Serinuse palette. This one came out last year, so we have the Serinuse and the Serinuse Nocturne. And there are definitely some similarities here, especially when it comes to the mattes. But where the original Serinuse palette went into some more cooler tones, we have like a navy in here, we have a couple of pops of gold, we have this sort of similar blue brown shifty shade in here as well. The Nocturne palette kind of took us a little bit more green, a little bit more earthy, and I think they're both beautiful. This one kind of makes me think a little bit more night sky. This one makes me think a little bit more forest. So I'll pop up the swatches side by side, and again, you can see the difference. The original Serinuse doesn't have any of those greens. And to me, it's just more night sky, brighter shimmers, whereas the Nocturne is just this really beautiful foresty type palette to me. Another palette from VISEART that gives me a similar kind of effect, I think, minus the greens, is the CHRISTYH ETENDU. This is another palette that I think is perfect for fall. It ends up looking grungier than it is, in my opinion, but it's still very, very wearable and approachable. I do think this has some similar elements. You do get some burgundies, you get some similar mattes, but of course you don't get the greens. So popping them up side by side, there is a very, very similar element here. If the greens aren't what makes you excited about this palette, then the CHRISTYH might be perfect for you if you're looking for those tones without the greens. You're going to get a very similar effect, and I do think that this particular shade right here in the CHRISTYH is actually kind of one of their best duochrome shifty shades. It's got that burgundy to gold shift, which I think is stunning. So I do think this is beautiful. I wouldn't say that if you have CHRISTYH, you should totally skip the Serinuse Nocturne. It's just that if you don't love green, or the greens in here are not what excite you, but the overall vibe and aesthetic of the palette and the sort of naturey, earthy tones are what makes you happy, the CHRISTYH might be ideal. But the last comparison I have for this palette is not from VISEART, but I'm wondering if it's one we all initially thought of, and that is the Makeup by Mario Ethereal Eyes Nature palette. So this was his holiday release this year, and holding them up side by side, there is definitely something similar going on. Now, I was kind of critical of the Makeup by Mario because I love this color story. I really, really do. I think it's stunning. This is the third in his Ethereal Eyes line, and the last two both had these very shimmery, wet looking shimmery topper shades in there that didn't have a lot of base, but that just give such a beautiful wet effect to the lids. I love that formula. I also love a good soft metallic like what we get in here and what we get in the VISEART palettes. My critique was that he's still calling this an Ethereal Eyes palette. Meanwhile, the formulas that actually make these palettes ethereal aren't in here. This is also really pricey, but of course I do love the color story. I like his formula a lot. I do think he tends to keep very, very similar mattes in these palettes as well. It's really the shimmers that get switched around, and I still love this palette. I just think it lost its etherealness, but I think some people are really happy about that because not everyone wants those wet effects. That being said, the VISEART palette, we get the same amount of shades. This retails for 62 Canadian dollars. This retails for 110 Canadian dollars. And we're getting a very similar effect here and very similar formulas. And I'll pop up the swatches side by side. Now, there are some tonal differences between the greens, but nothing intense. I think the Makeup by Mario, if anything, runs a little bit lighter in tone. But overall, I think they're similar enough that you would definitely not need both of these. So perhaps if you were eyeing up the Makeup by Mario and you just kind of weren't sure, but you love the color story, I would absolutely consider this one from VISEART, because even though the shades are not 100% shade for shade identical, you're going to be able to get some very, very similar looks. The formula is just as good, if not better, and it's a lot less expensive. They are going to have a Black Friday sale. These palettes, I believe, will only be 10% off. I also have a code with their website that you can always use on VISEART to get you 10% off as well. So this can be even cheaper than the 62 Canadian, or I think it's around 40 or 50 US. So you can always get a good savings on VISEART. And like I said, the formula is just as good, if not better. And we're getting a very, very similar color story to that Makeup by Mario. Okay, turning now to the Violette Nocturne palette. Now this one is super pretty. I do love a good purple. Purples, pinks, and greens are my safe colors outside of my neutral brown. So between these two new palettes, they've really covered everything. I like this color story a lot. I think it's stunning. I think it's a much softer but also very fall winter take on some beautiful purples. I do of course have to compare this to the original Violette ETENDU palette. Now this one is of course much brighter for the purples. We have some much brighter pops, some more jewel leaning tones if anything. I've always loved this palette because I love that you have all these browns that have these purpley undertones. Plus we have all of these gorgeous shimmers, and then a silver always pairs so beautifully with purples. And then we have this shade here, which is kind of like a dusty mauve shimmer that I love so much. So in comparison, the new Violette Nocturne doesn't look nearly as bright and vibrant. But if this is more of our spring summer variant, this is our perfect fall winter. It's a little bit more cool toned, it's more muted. We only get 3 shimmers in the new one, and there really isn't a lot of crossover in terms of similar shades. We don't even get as many of these purple tone browns in the new palette. So popping up the swatches, I do think the Nocturne version gives us some more lighter shades to work with, but of course far less shimmer, whereas the original Violette is much brighter, deeper, more jewel tone leaning. I think they're both beautiful, but I don't think there's a lot of crossover between either of them. I also wanted to compare this palette to the Lila Lumiere palette that came out around this time last year. There's definitely a similarity here in terms of these more muted, cooler tones. They're both perfect for winter and fall. We do, of course, get a lot more shimmers in the Lila Lumiere. So in comparing these two, I do like the Lila Lumiere color story a bit more. I just think it's pretty and I can get more shimmery looks from it. I do love a good matte look. I really do, but my fingers always find their way into the shimmers and I'm always happiest that way. So popping up the swatches, again, you can see some similar vibes there. Of course, the Violette is leaning much more purple, but we're both getting these more sort of cool tone muted vibes for the winter. Between the two, I like the Lila Lumiere, but if you love some purples and you don't mind that you only get 3 shimmers, I do think this one's gorgeous, and I love that white shade with the purple shift. Next, I pulled out the Midsummer Lumiere palette, which was their summer release for this year. And once again, we have some similar effects. This one is also a little bit more muted. This one, of course, does have some more purpley elements to it. It has a bit of a burgundy kind of element to it. I did use this palette a ton when it first came out, and I think I'll be reaching for it quite a bit going into the winter months as well. I just love these muted tones. This is another one that isn't overly heavy on the shimmers, and comparing them side by side, I do think there are some similarities. I think the Midsummer gives us a little bit more brightness, a little bit more gold, but overall, there are certainly some similarities here. And popping up the swatches, I do think the Midsummer Lumiere ends up looking just a little bit softer and a little bit brighter overall than the Violette Nocturne, but they're both very, very beautiful palettes. The Midsummer Lumiere is definitely the option if you don't love purples as much, but you still love those more muted, dusty pink tones. Also, very quickly, a palette that is not from VISEART is one that came out from NARS at the tail end of last year, and this is their Afterglow Tempting palette. Now, this one kind of got my attention for that purple shade that's in here. So to me, the NARS does pull a little bit more warm, a little bit more pink, but the pop of purple is of course what got my attention. The NARS is also much more shimmer heavy. And popping up the swatches, of course, we do get more intensity from NARS. Again, it's a little bit more pink. We get more shimmer. I do think the metallics in the NARS end up being quite a bit brighter and shinier. I do also really love the NARS formula. I think they have some of the absolute silkiest mattes. I do think I'll be able to get a little bit more range from the VISEART, but if you have the Afterglow Tempting, you might still be able to create some pretty similar looks to the Violette Nocturne. So I was kind of thinking to myself, I did this exact same thing last year when they released 2 palettes for holiday, and I always try to guess which palette I'm going to like more, and I'm always wrong. Last year it was the Praline Chocolat and the Lila Lumiere. I loved both. I thought for sure I was going to like the Lila palette more, and I liked the Praline more. I just did. And then this year, I thought for sure I was going to like the Violette Nocturne more just because it's lighter and brighter, and I prefer the Serinuse Nocturne. I love the greens in here. I love that I was able to go a little bit more rose gold, but I love the way all of the shades just sort of tie into one another and work so well together. The same can be said for the purple palette, but I do like that we get more shimmers in the Serinuse. If the lack of shimmers doesn't bother you and you just love this color story, then I think this is a great purchase. It's a beautiful, beautiful palette, solid formula. They did not miss once again with this formula. The Serinuse Nocturne is definitely my favorite. I think I like it even more than the original Serinuse. I do like it more than the Makeup by Mario that gives us a very similar effect as well. I think they did a fantastic job with this Serinuse Nocturne palette. So both of these palettes are fantastic. I recommend both of them, especially if you're wanting to shop the upcoming Black Friday sales. I did ask them if creator codes can be stacked on top of other discounts, and they said they can, and that the creator codes are the only ones that can be stacked on top of others. So my code should still work for the Black Friday sales. You can always try it, and that can be used on any of their products, not just these 2 new ones. I do love these 2 new ones, but I love a lot of their palettes. So let me know all of your thoughts down below. I love hearing from you guys so much. Are you picking these up? Are you shopping any of their other palettes? Are you shopping their Black Friday sales? What are your thoughts on these in general? I just love hearing from you guys so much. If you're new here, I hope you'll consider subscribing before you go. I do upload new videos every single week. Thank you again so very much for watching, and I will see you in my next one.